Where there is good, there must always be evil. For every hero, a villain. For every Batman, there's the Joker. For Luke Skywalker, there's Darth Vader. For Peter Pan, there's Captain Hook. And of course, for Doctor Who, there will always be the Daleks. But how did these two opposing sides meet? When did the Doctor first fight against the evil that is the Daleks? What was the beginning of this classic example of good versus evil? Well, that's what we're going to find out today. So sit back and enjoy as we see the Doctor and his friend's first confrontation with the Plunger Bots, and see the first sparks of an adversary that would go on to define the show. Now, this story is a big deal. It not only introduces the Daleks, the most iconic and enduring villains in the show's history, but it also is what caused Doctor Who to start to gain an audience. The previous story wasn't all that great, and it was kind of in the air whether or not the show would last that long. But that's when the Daleks came and invaded the TV screens. The British public almost immediately fell in love with these guys, and it started to fall in love with the show too. Viewership went up from 50% from the start of the serial to the end. So, who were the people responsible for creating such an icon of science fiction? First we must talk about the writer Terry Nation, who was truly the man behind the Daleks. Of course he wrote this story. Having written for popular science fiction shows like Out of This World, Nation caught the attention of David Whittaker, who wanted Nation to write a story for the new sci-fi show at the BBC, which he declined. But then, when unemployment and a family to feed reared its ugly head, that offer started to look pretty good. He then got to writing the second scheduled serial of the show, originally titled The Mutants, or Doctor Who and the Mutants. While writing this story, Nation took heavy inspiration from the H.G. Wells novel The Time Machine, in which two tribes, the pacifist Eloys and the barbaric Murlocs, fight for their planet. Nation did not only take inspiration from other works of science fiction to create his monsters, however, but from real-world horrors. The Nazis were a very integral part of the Daleks' development. Their famous catchphrase of "exterminate" is a reflection of the Nazis' attempt of racial extermination and ethnic cleansing. Nation wasn't the only one who had a hand in creating the Daleks, however. We also must shed some light on Raymond Cusick, who created the iconic design of the creatures, taking the role after the original designer, Ridley Scott. Yes, that Ridley Scott almost designed the Daleks had to be replaced due to scheduling problems. Cusick came in and got to work, saying that he based the basic design of the Daleks on the image of a man in a chair, building from Nation's descriptions in the script of metal creatures with no human features. Cusick created the signature pepper pot design with the long islands and plunger arms. Both the writing of the script and the creation of design were both overseen by producer Verity Lambert, who also had a huge hand in getting the Daleks on the air, having specific instructions from series creator Sidney Newman to make sure no bug-eyed monsters got on the show. She understood that the Daleks, who were very bug-eyed, were more than just the average monster of the week alien from other sci-fi shows. She saw the nuance in not only Nation's script, but So, she decided to go forth with the story, much to the displeasure of Newman and head of serials Donald Wilson, but they didn't have anything else to film, so they said fuck it and allowed the story to be made. And what a great decision that was, cause the ratings and viewership for the show skyrocketed during the airing of this serial. Airing from the 21st of December 1963 to the 1st of February 1964, this serial started with an audience of 6.9 million at part 1 and ended up with 10.4 million at part 7. This serial was definitely successful at the time, but does it hold up now? Well, let's find out. Part 1, called The Dead Planet, opens where the last story left off, with the travellers arriving on this planet and not realising the high radiation levels. As they step out of the TARDIS, they find themselves in a very weird forest. They come to find that the jungle has been petrified, with everything in it having been turned to stone, though they do not know why. As the Doctor and Susan go on ahead, Ian and Barbara have a talk. Barbara wonders why the Doctor didn't take them back instead of bringing them here. Ian says that maybe the Doctor can't, but that they should stay positive. They decide to keep an eye on the Doctor, but not without being a little snide.
Well, I suppose we'd better make sure he doesn't fall down and break a leg. Don't you ever think he deserves something to happen to him?
Yes.
Up ahead, the Doctor and Susan are exploring when they discover a metal creature. The Doctor surmises that the creature has long been dead, but was metal even when it was alive. As they explore further, they come across a large city made entirely of metal.
Well, Doctor, can you see anything? Any sign of life?
No sign of life. No, just buildings. Magnificent buildings.
It's only a model.
The Doctor wants to explore the city, but Ian insists that they go back to the TARDIS, which the Doctor reluctantly agrees to. On their way back, Susan gets lost and hears some spookiness in the trees, very like Snow White. Back on the TARDIS, Susan talks about what happened.
Did Susan tell you what frightened her?
Yes, she's convinced that someone touched her.
There was someone out there and they touched you.
She's upset that no one believes her, but that doesn't matter now because it's lunchtime. We see them use this weird little machine to make these little bars of stuff that's supposed to be bacon and eggs. So I guess it's kind of like astronaut food, or that gum from Willy Wonka.
Not bad. What do you think, Barbara?
I think it's delicious.
My bacon's a bit salty.
But it shouldn't be, it's English.
No, seriously, Doctor.
Before these lot can really start yucking it up, however, they hear a knocking at the TARDIS door. They go to check the scanners to find no one out there, and when they go outside they find no one out there, but they do find a metal box on the ground and they expect it. Inside the box they find little glass bottles with some weird liquid inside. Not knowing what they are, they decide to bring them into the TARDIS. Even though they didn't find anyone out there, it's still enough to provoke Ian and Barbara to want to leave. The Doctor says, "Alright, keep your hair on," and starts to leave, but...
I don't know, the heart take-up was rising normally and...
What's wrong?
Oh, don't distract me, please. Yes, there we are. You see the end of it's unscrewed itself and the fluid has run out.
What have you got to spare?
Oh, no need for that. This is easily repaired. All we have to do is refill it.
The Doctor says they need mercury to fill the fluid link with, but he hasn't got any, but insists that there must be some in the city. Ian is suspicious, but they have no other choice, so they decide to go in the morning. The next day they arrive at the metal city and decide to split up, which is a bad idea in a normal setting, but it's a truly stupid one when you're about to explore an ominous city on an alien planet. They do anyway, and while roaming the corridors, Barbara gets lost. The others meet back up having found no mercury, but Barbara is still missing. It's as though this was a stupid idea from the beginning. The walls start closing in on Barbara, and she starts to freak out when... don't worry, Barbara, that's just the plumber trying to find his way to the toilets. Anyway, part 2, titled The Survivors, starts with the others going back into the city to find Barbara. While searching, they walk into a room filled with Geiger counters all reading high. They realise that the planet is highly irradiated, and that explains the petrified jungle, and also why they've been feeling sick. They've all got radiation sickness. The Doctor guesses that the planet must have been bombarded with a neutron bomb, which destroys all living tissue but leaves metal untouched. The Doctor says they need drugs, and they has some back at the TARDIS. Ian says they can't go without Barbara, and also that they still need mercury for the fluid link. The Doctor comes clean about messing with the TARDIS, and that there's nothing actually wrong with it. Then he says that they should leave Barbara and get the drugs from the ship. Ian is not having any of this, however, and so having the fluid link on him, decides to not give it to the Doctor until they find Barbara. The Doctor reluctantly agrees, but he doesn't really have any other choice. As they step out of the room, they run into some odd-looking fellows. Ian tries to make a run for it, and the Daleks blast him, thus bringing the end to Ian's time on the show. Though it was brief, I feel like I really got to know him. His fun, jokey side, his more serious leadership role, and his strong moral compass all helped to make him a great, if short-lived, companion. And he will be missed. Nah, I'm only joking. Ian's actually fine. The Daleks just blasted him with a beam that stopped his legs from working, so he can't run away. The Daleks take them to a cell where they're holding Barbara. While they're talking, they mention that the Daleks might not just be machines.
Do you think they really are just machines?
What do you mean?
Well, I was going to say, do you think there's someone inside them?
Ian tells Barbara that they got radiation sickness and the doctor's got it bad.
Well, unless we get treatment, we shall die.
The Daleks then interrogate the doctor about who they are and where they came from. They tell him about how 500 years ago they were fighting in a war against the Thals, the other inhabitants of the planet. The use of neutron bombs in the war caused the planet to become irradiated, and that both the Daleks and the Thals have mutated because of this. The Daleks creatures have lived inside these metal tanks to protect themselves from the radiation, and they cannot leave the city. The remaining Thals have now live in the jungle and use some form of anti-radiation drugs to stay alive. The doctor says that they'll die without the drugs and they need someone to go to the TARDIS to get them. The Daleks agree and say one of them must go immediately. Back in the cell, Ian tries to walk.
That's not too bad, is it?
Why don't you sit down for a
No, I'll be all right. All right. Oh!
The doctor comes back and explains the situation.
The file of drugs left outside the TARDIS, remember?
Yes, what about them?
It's possible that they may have been anti-radiation gloves. Drugs.
Ian says he'll go, but Susan wants to come with too, saying it has something to do with the TARDIS's lock.
Look, it's a defense mechanism. There are 21 different holes inside the lock. There's one right place and 20 wrong ones. If you make a mistake, the whole inside of the lock will melt.
When the Daleks say it's time to go, he can't. So Susan, being the only one able to go, must go it alone. Despite being scared, Susan decides to go to save the others. Susan runs through the jungle all scared until she finally arrives at the TARDIS. She gets the drugs and, though hesitant for a moment, leaves the safety of the TARDIS. Part 3, titled The Escape, opens with Susan exiting the TARDIS, only to meet a shadowy figure. This is Aladdin, the Thal, who, as you can see, is not hideously mutated. He's surprised to hear that the Daleks are still alive. The Thals believed them to have all died out centuries ago. Aladdin says that he left the drugs in the metal box for them, and that the Daleks most likely will take the drugs from them. He gives Susan a second set and tells her to not reveal it to the Daleks. Aladdin hopes to break peace with the Daleks and his tribe, as his tribe have been travelling many miles in search of food. Arriving back in the city, Susan gives the rest of the drugs while the Daleks watch them on the monitor. They decide to agree to a false peace treaty with the Thals and give them food, which is all a scheme to destroy their old enemy once and for all. The Daleks make Susan write a letter to the Thals telling them all about the treaty, but the Daleks are confused by something.
What is the last word here?
The last word?
So, son, stop that noise!
When the Thals receive the letter, it tells them to come to the city tomorrow, where there'll be a bunch of food and supplies waiting for them. Back in the cell, the prisoners start to get rowdy.
I want to know why. Why are you on their side and against the rest of us?
Take your hands off me! How dare you, sir!
I want an answer!
Don't start
I can
arguing.
see it in his face!
Ian,
Everybody
Susan, what are you doing?
This is all an act to break the camera so they could talk freely.
Cable is strong. They have broken it deliberately. They can be moved immediately to another room. The eye repaired? No. Extermination then?
Hey, they said the thing. They realize that the Daleks are powered by static electricity which comes from the metal floor, kinda like bumper cars. They plan to cut off the Daleks' power supply with the cloak that Aladdin gave Susan when the next Dalek comes to feed them. But Barbara says this won't work because the Daleks can see it coming, so she comes up with her own plan.
What are you up to?
I'm making mud.
When the next one shows up, they activate their plan. They then slap some mud inside and jump it.
Keep away from me! Keep away! Keep away! What's a gun? What's a gun? Keep away from me!
When they finally power it down, they remove the head.
Susan, Barbara, go in the corridor and keep a lookout.
They take the creature out and Ian gets inside instead. As they leave, the ugly little thing sticks its hand out. Part 4, called The Ambush, begins with them walking around the city with Ian and the Dalek shell. They turn a corner to find another Dalek. When the Dalek questions them about why they're being moved, Susan pretends to get hysterical so the Daleks will let them into the lift.
Hold her! I have got her! Now hold still! Help me to get them inside!
It doesn't take too long for the Daleks to realise that what's going on and try to break in. On the inside, the Doctor magnetically locks the door so they can't get in. They then try to get Ian out, but it's stuck. The Daleks start to burn through the door, and Ian tells the others to go on without him. The others take the lift up to the surface while Ian tries to free himself. They send the lift back bound for Ian. The Daleks finally break in and blast Ian, only to find
It is empty.
Ian comes up in the lift just in the nick of time. While looking for a way out, they look out a window to see the files arriving. Knowing that they're in for an ambush, they try to warn them. Meanwhile, the Daleks send one of their own up to get the gang. To stop them, they push this statue onto the lift. This kind of brings up the question of Dalek architecture and who exactly built that thing. I mean, it's just a random sculpture in a hallway. Why would the Daleks have that? Outside, the Thals discuss the Daleks' intent.
These Daleks must have believed that they were the only survivors on this planet.
And are they relieved to find they aren't? Or are they shocked and horrified, perhaps insanely jealous?
They are based on fear, and fear breeds hatred and war.
The four make it to the outskirts of the city. The Doctor just wants to get back to the TARDIS and leave, but the others want to warn the Thals of the ambush. It's decided that Ian will stay behind to warn them while the others go back to the ship. When the Thals show up, their leader gives a very heartfelt speech to the Daleks.
Then let us work together to rebuild our world. We need your help, and in return, we'll make the soil live again.
They kill him.
It's a trap! Get out of here! Run!
Ian's extent of warning the Daleks is just jumping out and yelling, "Run!" and then legging it himself. Also, we see the supplies that the Daleks left out for the Thals, and I swear that's toilet paper right there. Like, why do the Daleks have toilet paper? We see everyone back at the Thals tribe talking about the recent events, which is where we first hear the name of the planet that we're on, Skaro.
Your survival is all here.
What, is this a solar system?
Yes. Skaro is a 12th planet. Here.
The Thals question why the Daleks would go so far to kill them, and Ian gives his insight into Dalek ideology.
They just aren't human.
Yes, but why destroy without any apparent thought or reason? That's what I don't understand.
No, there's a reason. Explanation might be better. It's stupid and ridiculous, but it's the only one that fits.
What?
A dislike for the unlike. They're afraid of you because you're different from them. So whatever you do, it doesn't matter.
The gang wonders why the Thals just don't fight back against the Daleks, but the Thals have a rule against violence, as the war is what destroyed their world all those centuries ago, so much so that pacifism has become ingrained in their instinct. They decide to leave things as they are and go back only when...
Oh, dear boy, now please, come along. You know I can't start the ship without it.
You've lost it?
No. The Daleks took it from me when they searched me. It's down there somewhere. In the city.
Part 5, titled The Expedition, opens back at the Dalek city, where they finally synthesize the anti-radiation drugs. Ian tries to convince the Thals to fight back against the Daleks, while the Doctor looks through the TARDIS to find another fluid link. It turns out they actually do need mercury.
Can't, my child. And I've looked through all my spares, and I've really discovered we do need some mercury.
I think that's what they call dramatic irony. Also, the Doctor calls Ian Chesterton.
What you might call tempting providence, Jessamine.
It's Chesterton.
Yes. Eh? I know that.
To cause the Thals to fight back, Ian grabs one of the girls and says he's going to trade her in for the fluid link to the Daleks. This causes one of the Thals to hit Ian. And now, the Thals are okay with violence. All those years of pacifism down the drain because Ian wanted to be Mr. Steal Your Girl. Daleks, something seems to be going wrong.
Cannot control! Help me! Help me! Help! 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 Help!
Seems like the Daleks have been taking the wrong kind of drugs and aren't having the best of times. They realise that not only have they become immune to the radiation, but now they need it to survive. They plan to bomb the planet once again with another neutron bomb.
Is this the end of the Daleks? We need radiation to survive, so we must increase our supply of radiation. Exactly. We may have to explode another neutron bomb.
The gang and the Fourth plan to split into two teams. One will go to the front of the Dalek city to distract them and disable their security systems, while Team 2 will travel through the swamps at the back of the city, which is filled with mutants, but may have a secret way into the city undetected. Team 2 has Ian and Barbara, who are accompanied by some Thals, while Ian washes his face in the swamp water, which is just... why? Like, you wouldn't wash your face in regular swamp water, so why would you wash your face in swamp water from an alien planet that's irradiated and filled with mutants? Anyway, Ian washes his face in the questionable water when he sees the mutant come out and run. He tells the other what happened, and they decide the best thing to do is sleep. In the morning, they tell some guy named Elliot to go get some water and to not get sucked into a whirlpool. Ah, come on mate, you had one job. Part 6, Tout the Ordeal, starts with the rest of the Team 2 seeing what happened to Elliot and quickly moving on. Meanwhile, Team 2, which is Doctor, Susan and Aladdin, tries to find a way to mess with the Dalek surveillance.
Now, the things we have to put out of action is the radio and television waves. They've obviously got complete coverage in and around the city.
And they don't leave much to chance.
We must presume they don't leave anything to chance.
While searching a cave, Barbara and a Thal named Ganatus find a hole that leads into, guess what, more caves. Team 1 comes up with an idea to blind the Daleks' cameras by reflecting light at them. While Team 2 travels further into the caves, one of the Thal starts to say he wants to go back.
Deeper all the time, we'll be trapped in the mountain. I know we will. Please, Ganatus, let me go back.
You can't.
But you don't really need me. Not really. Even if we do get through, we'll never defeat the Daleks. Ganatus, we're all going to be killed.
His complaining leads to the caves tunneling in, which means they have to go on. I think that's what they call dramatic irony. The Doctor and Susan discover the Dalek circuit breaker and decide to break it. Aladdin runs away back to the Trial while the Doctor and Susan successfully disarm the circuit but are caught by the Daleks.
From here.
My dear child, don't you realize what I've done? A few simple tools,
Yes, but we mustn't
a
waste
superior
time.
brain.
Go now.
But I'm not...
They tell them about their plan and how instead of blowing up another neutron bomb, they're planning up to blow up a nuclear reactor, kinda like Chernobyl. Team 2 come across a chasm and jump over it one by one. They all make it safely across until it's the Crybaby's turn. Is it just me, or does it look like Ian pushed them? Part 7, called The Rescue, opens with the Crybaby hanging on and Ian being dragged down by him. Even though they try to save him, the Crybaby decides to sacrifice himself and cut the rope. No, I did not edit the crashing noise. We see the Doctor and Susan being held captive by the Daleks as they start to put their plan into action. The Doctor voices the complaints about the situation.
This senseless, evil killing.
Team 2 run into a dead end and start to lose hope when they notice a light coming from a hole in the wall.
We're through. Must have been trapping under the pipes all the time. We're through.
The Doctor tries to bargain with the Daleks, telling them about the TARDIS and how it can travel through time. He says he'll show them how it works and that he can help them build one for themselves. The plan backfires though, as the Daleks say that they'll just take the TARDIS from themselves when everyone else is dead.
Now we know of the machine, we can examine it for ourselves.
But you can't operate it without me.
Every problem has a solution.
The Team 2 makes it into the city and are watching the monitors by the Daleks and the Doctor. The Daleks begin the countdown to the explosion.
Stop it, please.
Nothing can stop the Daleks. Begin countdown. 100 beginning now.
Aladdin joins Team 2 and together they look for the control room. After some trouble with the door, they sneak into the control room without the Daleks noticing. They free the Doctor and Susan and ambush the Daleks. The countdown stops and the Thals and the Daleks engage in an epic battle. The last of the Daleks begs for its life, and the Doctor gives it the cold response.
Or it will be an over Dalek!
Even if I wanted to, I don't know how.
It's the motherfucking Eagle Double G. Snoop Dogg!
So, with the last of the Daleks defeated, and our heroes prepare to leave, the Doctor gives the Thal some advice.
Always search for truth. My truth is in the stars. And yours?
The gang says their goodbyes, and the TARDIS dematerializes. I think they call that dramatic irony. And with that, it's the end of the story. Now this was a big one, and I have a lot of things to say about it, but first, a review. Now this story captures you right from the moment it starts. Everything from the petrified jungle, to the metal city, to that classic part 1 cliffhanger. It's all great, and it only gets better when we see the Daleks for the first time. It comes as such a shock. They just appear out of nowhere, and the Daleks themselves are just great here, a great first impression. The designs are instantly iconic. They're just so inhuman, so alien and cold. I love how seriously they're taken in this story, right from the moment we meet them. You can see that they're not to be messed with, but the Daleks can still be humorous, and it will never not be funny hearing a Dalek scream.
Keep away from me! Keep away! Keep away! What's the gun? What's the gun? Keep away from me! Help! Cannot control! Cannot control! Help me! Help me! Help! 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 Help!
But aside from the Daleks, this story doesn't really have much else. The story is interesting at first. The idea of two alien races who fought in a war that destroyed their planet and both choosing two outlooks on the future, love and war, is great. But I don't feel the story does much with them. The Daleks are great, as I said before, and their scheming and their plotting, I don't think we see enough of it. The Daleks don't really seem to talk amongst themselves and know who. They only really talk to the Doctor. They feel here as a race on the edge of extinction, who take any opportunity to take out their old enemy the first chance that they get. But the Thals are pretty lackluster. The ideas of a race that is so against violence that pacifism is now a part of their instincts is a great concept, especially as a response to a planet-destroying war. But the Thals get over their violence-free lifestyles pretty quick. And as characters, the Thals are very forgettable. I only remember their names because I wrote them down. And this story really starts to drag around part 5, with them running around and jumping ledges. It just feels like filler until the climax. And this is the start of a trend that happens a lot in Doctor Who, stories being too long for no good reason. Most stories could easily be condensed to 4 or 5 parts, but instead extend themselves so far that they need filler to fill up the time. And the climax, while fun in my opinion, is way too quick and easy for a final battle. The Daleks get destroyed by a bunch of hippies with sticks and stones. But if the story has one thing going for it, it's the characters. The main 4, that is, who will get something fun to do. The Doctor once again is a dickhead. Ian and Barbara are just so lovable together, and even Susan gets something to do, with her getting to get the drugs and facing her fears. I'll get more into them soon, but as for the story as a whole, it has some really good stuff, but some story elements and pacing issues really bring it down. But it's still a fun watch, and definitely worth your time to see where the Daleks began. I give this story a 7 out of 10. But now for my analysis, and there's a lot to talk about. So first, the characters. First the Doctor, who doesn't really have much to do in this story. The Thals are the ones who defeat the Daleks, and Ian and Barbara are the ones who help them out and fight alongside them. Even Susan gets something to do, but the Doctor? Nothing. The only thing the Doctor contributes to the story is getting them into trouble, tampering with the TARDIS, which forces them to go back to the Dalek city, and causing everything to happen in the first place. The only time the Doctor tries to help the situation is when he tries to tell the Daleks about the TARDIS, but that only backfires on him. Truly, the Doctor is holding a massive L in this story, but there's still some likability to him through all that. His curiosity and wonder for all things unusual are on full display here, even if it does get them into trouble. And though he can be pig-headed and cruel and sometimes a straight-up dick, there's still a nobility to him here. The Doctor despises killing even here in these first stories, and it shows. The way he begs the Daleks and says how reprehensible their plan is really shows how even he has a moral code. Ian and Barbara get a lot to do here. As I said before, they lead the charge on the Daleks. They both are great, but I feel like out of the two of them, Ian sticks out more here. He gets so many great moments, from keeping the fluid leak from the Doctor so they have to search for Barbara, to telling the others to go ahead of him while he gets stuck on the Dalek shell. He just has so many great moments. But I do feel that his best moment in this story is the dilemma he faces. When he's confronted with the ideas of convincing the Thals to fight for him, he's reluctant. He doesn't like the idea of forcing a group of devout pacifists to fight on his behalf and die so that he and his friends can escape. It's a tough one, and I really sympathise with Ian here. And finally, there's Susan, who does have a really nice arc here, where she starts out afraid and unconfident, and when the time comes up for her to step up, though scared, she goes through with it. And by facing her fears, she gains a new sense of courage. I love when she creates a distraction to fool the Daleks. It's a great moment. Moving away from the characters, let's talk about the Daleks themselves. The main theme running in this story is violence, hate, and war. The Daleks are meant to be the epitome of hate. It's like what Ian said, they have a dislike for the unlike. It's xenophobia to its ultimate degree. They believe themselves to be superior above all other life, and that's why it's so important for the Daleks to be creatures and tanks other than just robots. I feel that those who know Doctor Who from pop culture and have only seen the Daleks in passing can be forgiven for thinking that they are just robots. I get it, they look like R2-D2, it makes sense. But it is crucial to understand that they are living creatures. They're little mutant monsters inside metal shells that feel nothing but hate and a desire to kill. That's what makes them scary, and that's what also makes them such great villains. On the other hand, we have the Thals, who devoted themselves to pacifism and peace. The Thals bring up a great interesting question. Should you sacrifice your morals to survive, or should you let you and your people die by your principles? We should strive for a better and more peaceful world, but that there are always going to be people and things that wish to do us harm, and that it is okay to defend yourself. But that's just how I feel, and I've talked long enough. Join me next time on Doctor Who Digest as we take a look at the edge of destruction. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you all very soon. See ya.